What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today is, well, that's the thing. It's going to be a little bit of a different type of episode. Currently, Old Legs is under the weather. He's not doing so hot. I think we might be talking to him later on. It just kind of depends. Things are kind of up in the air. I did have a different guest I was hoping to bring on, a friend of mine, Kyle. We were not able to get that worked out. Not a problem. But for today's episode, we are going to have a guest, Jack Draper, actually, I'm going to be calling. He is a friend. We met because we were both fans of Chris Zimmerman. He had a couple podcasts that we were kind of the first big fans of, and we're kind of interactive on Twitter, and we kind of met that way. We are both big fans of David Lynch and Twin Peaks, and as you've seen by the marquee, is it called it? I don't know if they really call it a marquee, but the title of this episode, we're going to be talking about Twin Peaks. Kind of because the return, the long-awaited return, had come out earlier this year and just come out on Blu-ray a couple weeks ago, I think. And so just, I think Twin Peaks is just one of those shows that has touched a lot of people. And it's just kind of, it's just in the zeitgeist, I think a lot of people across generations have come to it, and it's just, for whatever reason, it became kind of a cult phenomenon. Kind of got some following. It was only on for 2 seasons initially, and it was one of those where it was even though it was rated highly by the critics, it did get canceled halfway through the second season. So they kind of tried to wrap it up, but then it got extended because of an extensive letter writing campaign, actually, by the fans. Were kind of writing in and just begging to have it brought back, and then they, finished it, and whatever else. But, yeah, so the plan was we were just going to kind of get into it and talk about our thoughts. I am going to be calling Jack here, and I'm going to talk to him about it. He was the guy who, as it was going on each episode, we were messaging each other about it, and we were kind of keeping up to date on it. And then if Old Legs is feeling up to it here in a bit, we may talk to him. Otherwise, it could just be Jack and I, which would be completely fine with me. So let's just go ahead, and I'm gonna try and give Jack a call and see if he is available. Can you guys hear that?
Hello.
Jack, what's going on?
Not much. How about yourself? How about South Dakota in late December?
It is currently -8 degrees right now.
Yeah, it's not much warmer here in Boston.
Oh yeah, what's it like out there?
Yeah. We're surviving, and we're thriving.
Well, good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's been kind of a shift, because I did just get back from Aruba, as you know, and there's every day was 85, sunny, and then you come back and just get hit right in the face with good old South Dakota
85
weather.
and sunny seems like years away.
Yeah.
Away.
I don't know.
And here we are just in tundras, and we can never catch a break. It's horrible. I just came back from a weekend a few days in Quebec,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never experienced anything as cold as that. We couldn't
Really?
leave our hotel room. It was horrible, and our original intention was that we would ski, but we're like, it would be pretty chilly, but I think we'll deal with it. We didn't realize that it would be negative 25, or it would be worse than anything that any of us have ever felt before. So it was, it was pretty bad, but yeah.
Yeah, well, you're from Florida originally, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
so you're not exactly inclined to that
home,
weather.
It's like I'm in paradise, but yeah.
Yeah, I was technically born in Minnesota, not too far from here, but just honestly, when I was in Aruba, I kind of missed the cold. Like, I've got some insulation on me. I've been growing out my beard. I'm just like I'm more built for that. So being in 85, like the first day or two was nice, but after that I was like, I'm just not. I just kept thinking of Jeremiah Johnson in his full beard and his fur coat and his, whatever, scarf and gloves and everything. It's like, you don't put that guy on a beach. He's suited for the mountains. He's ready for the cold. And that's, so honestly, coming back, like, it was bittersweet, but there's just something about breathing in the cold air that just, it gets to me. I don't know if it's to my blood. Yeah.
Like it becomes almost instinct, where you're
right.
like, okay, this is what I'm meant for. And,
yep, exactly.
When you talked about Aruba, it's like you have to shift gears almost. It's a tough transition because your body has to develop into that new situation. But yeah. It sucks.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is, it feels like it never ends. Like summer,
right.
You at least for us, it's like a 4-season sort of deal here. But like summer just feels so short, and then winter just so long. I mean, the older you get, the longer it has sustainability. So
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I always say I would take a longer fall. Fall is always my favorite season, but we barely get it at all anymore. It's like it's summer all the way almost through September. And then even in October, it's like, it's kind of warm, and then it's immediately cold. It's like, give me, I'm ready. Summer can be over right at the end of August. Give me fall weather of like 50s to 60s, even 40s from September to November, and then winter can start in December. Like, I'm completely fine with all that. And there's not really much of a spring either. Like, we always get, especially here, we'll always get snow and ice in March and April. Like it'll usually
when does summer begin?
Usually, probably about June is usually when you're finally like, okay, now summer's here. Because it's like sometimes in March you'll get like a week or two of like, okay, here's spring weather, but then you just get sideswiped by the ice storms, and it's not a safe place to live, I guess.
And it's like weather can be pretty unpredictable here because, like, I remember a few years ago on Halloween night, it was like 85.
Wow.
And it was, and that was the year that summer just didn't really feel like it went away yet. And we just couldn't wear our Halloween costumes because we were all sweating.
Wow.
Do we want to go trick or treating? Do we want to go to the pool? Like, we were kind of confused, but.
That's weird.
Yeah. And like sometimes it would be winter doesn't know when to end. Sometimes beginning of April, it would still be like freezing out. So it's like it's a weird transition. Yeah.
It is weird. You know what else is going to be a weird transition is trying to transition from weather into Twin Peaks, which there's
no real segue.
No, so that's the best I can do. But that is why we're talking here. I was planning on having another guest here too, but that didn't work out. So, but like I was just doing in my intro, I was saying that you and I were excited for the return. We were messaging after every episode pretty much, and just kind of following along. But before we get into all that, I wanted to get your take on the original Twin Peaks from, was it 1990 and 91? Were those the first two seasons, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you first, hear about Twin Peaks?
So I thought about this today, and I think to make it more fulfilling, I guess, or to make it more to have more context, I think I'll tell you the story of how I first heard of David Lynch.
Okay.
So I was at my local comic book store about 2 years ago, and it was like August, summer, so there's no real big releases in the dead of August, right?
Sure.
And I was looking at the Criterion collection, right? It's not a huge selection that we have, but it's a tiny one. And I didn't really know what to buy, because it's like I was all new to the Criterions, and I go to the clerk and I said, "Do you have any recommendations? I'm new to this whole film community. I'm kind of blind. I'll go and watch something I haven't even seen before." And he pulled out Mulholland Drive. And this isn't even the first David Lynch movie, and I hadn't seen of David Lynch. I didn't know who he was. All I knew is that he had the Santa Claus beard and hair, and so I'm like, okay, I know who Nathan Watts is. I like King Kong, so and I paid for it, and I watched it that night, and of course, like everybody says, I was bewildered. I didn't know what was going on. It made no sense, but I loved it, and I loved it all the more for it. And Mulholland Drive, I've seen it a few more times since then, but it was truly an experience like I've never had since. I think that first time was truly something else. Like a few more, like that following January, I saw Eraserhead, and then going to like this. I think it's this past summer. I saw Twin Peaks because I knew the return was coming on, and I'd seen a few more David Lynch movies. I'd seen Lost Highway. I had seen A Wild at Heart, and so I'm like, okay, so now that I'm a little bit more well-versed with this guy, I think that I should, see the impact that he's had on TV. So when I first saw the original 2 seasons, I got it. Like, I wasn't really bothered with the dated sort of critique it had on soap opera, because I know that gets to some people. I didn't think that the acting. I knew when I saw Mulholland Drive, it just clicked with me, right? Like I bought it. So none of the problems that people have with it now didn't really affect me. So I was pretty into it, and like everybody, I think that season 1 is, I would say, perfect. The storytelling is flawless, I would say, and how Lynch uses visual storytelling is like no other, and I think the characters are amazing, and then we can go in depth later, but just my overall thoughts. I definitely think that this is nothing that nobody's ever heard before, but I think that season 2 gets a little messy. Like, once the killer is revealed, obviously they didn't want to reveal it, but once they did reveal it, the show kind of loses itself. And then the last episode of the show is one of my favorite episodes of TV ever, because Lynch came back.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I think that I would say that sums up my thoughts on it.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I'd like to know who that clerk was, who was just like, all right, base level to get you into movies. Let's do just the weirdest, most out there, pretty much director working. Like, that's kind of interesting, because I think most of the people would watch that and be like, I thought I liked movies, but after watching Mulholland Drive, I don't think I really like movies anymore. Like, if this is what being a movie fan means.
That following night, after I saw Mulholland Drive, I had told one of my friends about it, and unknowing to me, he was a huge Lynch fan, and he was like, okay, and he was the one who introduced me to the other Lynch film after that. And that following night, he gave me his Blu-ray of Blue Velvet, which that's a whole other podcast in and of itself. But and it all just snowballs from there. Like every Lynch fan has
Yep, for sure. I think when I first saw Twin Peaks was, it's probably 3 years ago, almost to the date.
Oh, wow.
Because it was, I believe it was 2014 going into 2015? No, that can't be right. Was it 2013 going into 2014? I'm just asking myself questions. It was one of those two. I don't know. But I just remember, like, my obvious co-host who's not here, special guest, Old Legs, he's kind of like, he and I, a lot of times when we talk, it's a lot of we just basically for this podcast just started recording conversations that we've had for a long time, but a lot of times it's just like recommending shit to each other. And he had recommended Twin Peaks because he'd seen it a long time ago, and he's like, yeah, I'm just rewatching it, you should check it out. And I didn't really know much about it. I had heard about it as like kind of a cult thing, and I knew absolutely nothing going into it. And it was over, I was in college still at the time, and it was over winter break. And so, like, I was still working at night, but, like, during the day, I just started watching it and watched it for, like, I don't know, however many days straight, and drank a lot of coffee. I remember that. Like, just every time, like, Coop would go in to the diner and get a cup, and he's like, that's good coffee. I'm like, I really want coffee. I just drank so much coffee. I just sat there all day doing that. And then I remember, like, at the end of the first season, which I agree with you, I think the first season is pretty much flawless. Like, to get into Twin Peaks, like, when you, like, that's just everything that you could want. And I agree, the second season, it does really get messy because they were going to cancel it when they announced the killer, and then because of that letter writing campaign, they came back and they didn't know what to do and whatever else. But
like, Lynch has this online. He has this interview with Magic M and who plays Shelley, and Kyle MacLachlan. He talks about, of course, Lynch is a goofball, so he's like, I'm not going to do the Lynch impression, but he's
okay,
like,
good, thank you.
The killer is this little goose laying an egg, and we wanted the goose to lay multiple eggs. And I think what I'm trying to translate is that it's a mystery trying to duplicate into other mysteries.
Okay.
Right? So I've always wanted to imagine a scenario. Are we going into spoilers?
Yeah. Okay. Spoilers.
Yeah,
fuck everybody else.
Spoilers.
We're talking about fucking Twin Peaks. So if you click this episode without watching it, it's on you, people. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I've always liked to imagine a scenario that if Leland was never the killer, and if Bob was just, because I love the idea of Bob being an entity. And
right, yeah, no, 100%.
Something that anybody can absorb, then where can you go from there? Because, I kind of like the idea of Leland being sort of an irrational, sort of insane person, because that's how he sort of grieves.
Right.
But to make him the killer and reveal it so soon, when you had so much going on, is a big mistake.
Yeah.
Because then where do you go from there? And the first time I watched it back in the summer, I saw that I had like maybe 13 or 12 more episodes to go. So I'm like, where's this going from here?
Right. No, yeah, that iconic
just to refresh your memory, I'm not sure if how caught up you are.
Refresh the shit out of it, Jack.
When they catch Leland, Cooper has all these charges brought up against him because he crosses the border, and then they bring in Denise Bryson, who is David X-Files.
Duchovny.
David Duchovny, thank you. And they are trying to stop the other Renault brother.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
it kind of goes crazy from there, and then they bring in Wyndham Earl, and I feel like
and that Asian guy, I hated that whole Asian guy story.
I hated Wyndham Earl. I hate Wyndham Earl. I know a lot of people think he's a fun character, and he does have his moments.
I know.
But I just think he begins to become a caricature of himself.
I liked in that. And again, I honestly only watched it the one time, and that was years ago. But the only thing that I liked about it was the setup of like just mentioning it in passing of like the guy who trained Coop kind of just like lost his mind and went rogue, and like
maybe I would have saved him for. I haven't read any of them. I'm not sure if you have, but I would have saved him for those novelizations.
Oh no,
that
I
Mark
didn't even.
Frost does. Because, like, I don't think he had a place for that second half. Because then he becomes sort of like a Tom and Jerry kind of story. And he's never even, like, brought face to face with Coop.
No.
At least I don't think so, but...
No, I don't, because... Yeah, go ahead.
And then there's that, like, James and the rich woman storyline. Do you remember this?
The rich woman storyline?
Yeah. And so the writers didn't know, obviously they didn't know what to do with him. And so James is like, you know what? I'm out of here. And he goes on his bike, and he's caught, and he goes to his bar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was going to kill her brother.
Yeah.
and it's batshit.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that.
Nowhere. And I have a friend who's actually watching Twin Peaks right now, my friend who showed me Blue Velvet, and I tell him, whenever you get to the plot thread that has James with a rich woman, skip it, because it has nothing to do with the important shit that's going on. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'm like, is this the same show?
Right.
But yeah, season 2 is quite the mess, and
it's so apparent that they had no idea what they were doing. It was just like, I think one of the, I don't know which episode of season 2, but I know that what's his name, Jake Gyllenhaal's father directed an episode of season 2.
Really?
Fun trivia.
I know Diane Keaton directed an episode.
Oh, really?
Huh. If you're hiring Gyllenhaal's dad and Diane Keaton to direct, I don't really think that's a good sign.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. Yeah, and then the whole, when did that, God, I should have, what was the guy's name? The douchey boyfriend who kind of became crippled. He kind of became a vegetable.
Crippled.
Like bald guy. He had the
Bobby was Laura's boyfriend.
Right, not Bobby. Bobby was trying to steal his girl.
Friend?
Yeah, like he was going after.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. He always had like the flannel jacket. He had the red car.
I do. Oh
Whatever.
Man, we feel unprepared.
Oh yeah.
Podcasting.
Have you heard an episode of this podcast before? That's like.
Oh man.
I have IMDb pulled up. I'm just gonna look at it. God.
Oh.
Because
This is gonna kill me. I feel like it's something douchey like Sean.
Yeah.
I remember him being ginger and a wrestler. God. And Nadine was like crazy for a while.
Leo.
She fell in love with him.
Johnson.
Oh, we're thinking of two different people.
We're thinking of two different people?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking of
Bobby
Leo.
His best friend.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what we're talking about?
Yes. And no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I would not
What's
be able
his
to
name?
pull that.
No.
Bobby. Nope. I have no idea. I mean, I could look through here, but I'm just...
Alright. Nonetheless.
Okay.
Leo was interesting. Cause
you know what I mean?
for
Like,
him,
he ended up being in a wheelchair, and he couldn't talk, and he was drooling, and...
Yeah. And it's like that similar situation with James, where it's like, the writers clearly didn't know what to do with him. And it's...
No.
And it is, they did paint themselves in a corner, because what do you do with a character that you don't know what to do with?
Right. Yeah, because he was this big menacing guy, and he was pretty frightening, and
yeah.
And then you kind of take care of him when he's just can't do anything, and then he's kind of, and then I don't know. It gets so.
Like what they did with Shelley Johnson and Bobby Briggs. They did for a few episodes at least. They did this sort of screwball comedy kind of thing with them, where it's like they're house shopping, but they have to drag Leo around because they can't abandon Leo.
Right.
And it's like they're playing husband and wife to this crippled kid.
Yeah, that's right.
But who is also Shelley's husband, and it's really strange. They did some
really
wacky
weird
stuff, and I'm not saying that.
Wacky is the best
wackiness.
word for it. It was extremely wacky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then there was that stuff with Audrey. I don't know if that was still season 1, but it was kind of like she kind of became her own private detective a little bit. Remember that whole stuff?
It was weird because they didn't know what to do with her entirely, because it started out that she had a crush on Coop, and then I think that they figured out quickly that was not working. But
right.
I think I found it to be kind of interesting, because she appeared to me, at least, an outsider, because she's the daughter of this father who pays no attention to her. So where else does she go but to the attractive FBI agent?
Right, and she was just kind of like another one. That's the other thing about the original Twin Peaks. There were so many saucy broads. I mean, there were so many beautiful women in that. You're just like, hot damn. But she was just kind of a foil, I guess, right away. She was just kind of, it was just kind of like, oh, I'm kind of this guy's daughter, and I have free reign to kind of be mischievous, and I don't know. It was, wow, it was.
We're going to get into Audrey. I think it's quite a bit of, if we go into the return.
Okay. Sure. Well, okay, the other thing I was going to say, before I forget, about the original Twin Peaks was, there was a moment, I don't know if I've told you about this before, Jack. That's the one thing. I have a good memory, especially about weird trivia shit. The only thing I can't remember is what I've told to who. So I apologize if I'm telling you the same story, but
no, don't worry.
Because I do it all the time. What was it? I think it was towards the end of season 1. It was when the Colonel was talking to Bobby, and he's just sitting down having pie, and he's like, will you sit with me, son? And Bobby doesn't want to.
Yeah. I know the scene.
Yeah, and that was it was just set up, and then the Colonel talking to Bobby.
Before I forget.
Yeah.
Mike is Bobby's best friend, the ginger guy wrestler.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture after.
Okay. Because I'm totally drawing a blank on that. Okay. I think I can see. Let me just look here. Yeah, and I'm not really remembering it that well. But, yeah, so that scene where the Colonel asks him to sit down and just starts talking to him pretty much about the White Lodge, we find out later, but just and you see Bobby's face, he tears up and his mouth is agape. That's exactly what I was doing watching that moment. I'm not one for over dramatics, but straight up, that was a religious experience. I was literally tearing up, and I was looking around what is going on? I was getting emotional watching it. And I'll have this on record. Not that I'm proud of this or anything. I don't cry that. The last time I cried was over 2.5 years ago. I remember. So I don't really cry that often. And I wasn't necessarily crying there, but it was it just hit me out of nowhere. I was
crying in a film, over a film, or it was crying in general?
Crying in general at all.
Okay.
Unhealthy, yes, I understand. But the last time I cried was actually seeing Inside Out in the theater. Like, at the end of it was the last time I cried.
No, we're all victims to the
Damn
Pixar emotion.
I know, I haven't seen Coco yet, because I don't. I'm like, they're going to get me. I know they are. They always do. But, they were just like,
Send her to the moon.
So, shut up. We're not doing that. I will not have my voice be picked up as crying. I don't want any record of that. But, like, Twin Peaks is just a show that, like, especially the original, just, like, hits you with moments like that where you just don't expect it. And because you're just kind of like, the phenomenon and the it's hard to pinpoint exactly, like, how Twin Peaks just got right into the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of like a very interesting combo of like this small town ho-hum, well-to-do kind of mystery, you know, going on. But then there's this dark side to it of this extremely surreal, abstract, horrifying underbelly that's also happening. And
synonyms.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And they just kind of they bounce off each other so well that it's like you're watching it and you're kind of like, oh yeah, like this Cooper, he's a fun detective and like he's kind of quirky. And then there's like a dream sequence where he's in and people are talking backwards. Where like, and you're like, what the fuck? And it just like that kind of shit, like Lynch. And I've come to find that it's called Lynchian filmmaking. Mm-hmm. But, like, the best way to describe it is just that surreal imagery. Like, him and Kubrick were, like, the best at that. And Lynch, like, really doubles down on it. But whatever it is, the shit that he does, like, that shit gets in my soul. Like, that horrifying, scary stuff, like, that is, like, on a primal level, is just extremely horrifying, and just like little stuff, like you said, Mulholland Drive. That's one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Is when the diner, when they walk that is like maybe the scariest shit I've ever seen. That whole scene just fills me with dread, and I'm like, just thinking about it freaks me out. Like it's I don't know how Lynch does it.
You haven't seen Inland Empire, have you?
No.
So I think I may have talked to you about this, but I recently watched it just because people were comparing the film to The Return so often, and I'm just this can relate to how Lynch does horror so well, and too well. I would say too well. And
I agree.
He's not known as a horror director, which is the most ironic thing about it.
Yeah, not at all.
And there's a scene in Inland Empire. It's one of the opening scenes. I'm saying one of the opening scenes because the film doesn't really open.
Okay.
And you see Grace Zabriskie, who plays Laura Palmer's mom.
Okay.
In Twin Peaks. You see her go to Laura Dern's house in the film, and so you see her go in, and it's like a bunch of Lynch-like dialogue goes back and forth, and then Laura Dern is talking about her movie that she's working on in Inland Empire, and she then shifts gears and becomes a completely different person, Grace Zabriskie, and she says, "Is there a murder in your film?" And Laura Dern's like, "No, it's a romance." And Grace is like, "Can I put a murder in your film?" And
Whoa.
And the camera just keeps getting closer and closer to her face, and you feel almost violated. And she gets more and more serious, and then you cut to Laura Dern, and she gets more and more serious. It's just like, "No, it's a romance. There's no murder. You can't put a murder in my film. Can you please leave my house?" or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it just, like you're saying, it's, it gets your soul. And I would actually throw Tarkovsky. I don't know if you've seen anything from Andrei Tarkovsky.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to get too posh here, but yeah, just giving shit.
He's someone that gets a lot of questions that are answered in very abstract ways.
Oh, yeah.
And I wouldn't say it's along those Kubrick and Lynchian categories, but I would say that he does something
it's the
unlike
same.
any other.
Right.
And
No, I see what you're
that
saying.
deserves recognition. Lots more recognition that he gets.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's more ethereal and kind of I get it. And I think the best way to describe this like surrealist stuff that we're talking about is like the way Lynch does it. Like he just can create like nightmares. Like they're just like dream scenarios. It's just like perfectly like what dreams are like, because it like kind of feels real, but it's like weird, and then just the crazy shit. I don't know. It's just, I don't know how he's able to like capture that on film so well, but I think that's why it like goes in so deep. Like even just like there's shit in all his movies, but like Mulholland Drive, when the old people are like following her down the hallway and they're like and their arms are out, like that's just it's too much.
Yeah. Like there's a scene in have you seen Lost Highway? I keep on like pulling random parts.
Love Lost Highway.
Lost Highway is great. I just think that I just think that it suffers from being the male counterpart, and so it's a lesser counterpart to Mulholland Drive because they're very similar. Anyway,
okay.
Lost Highway has this moment that you see Bill Pullman go into this dark, seemingly endless section of his apartment, and it just doesn't end. And I feel like I've had this dream, and it's just like, because I would say my worst fear is the dark.
Okay.
Unoriginal.
Very primal. That's like the primal fear is the dark. And, it's the unknown, and
it's like he goes in there, and the weirdest thing about that scene is that I forget what happens next. He may have disappeared. I think that's like when he. Spoilers for Lost Highway, but I think that's the scene when he kills Patricia Arquette. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's like
you're right.
That scene, it just it's one of those things where it's like I don't know how Lynch does it, but he does it so damn well. So I would prefer to not know how he does it and keep the secret to him.
That's true. Sometimes when you see stuff like that, it's just like I talk about. Sometimes I think I've said about like Roger Deakins' cinematography, or like just when you see something like that, or like watching Michael Jordan play basketball, it's just something where it's like I can never do that.
Or Larry Bird, but he's the greatest of all time.
Well, we are white, that's true, but like it's just something where it's just like you're right, like it's like you are special and better than me, and I'll never be that good. He definitely gets. He touches a place that not a lot of other people can get to. But there's just like The Shining for Kubrick is like, in my opinion, probably his best work. I don't know. It's hard to compare and contrast with because his movies are so different. But like I love The Shining. But there's just shots in that movie, like just one shot. And it's so many of them, but it's just like the way the camera is set up, the way the people are, the lighting especially. Just that one shot, and it just touches that place. We're like, oh shit, And it's like I don't know how they do it, but
he gets to a place.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's hard to get to, but they have.
One of my favorite movies of the year, I would say top 3, is Killing of the Sacred Deer. Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet because I live in the bum shit nowhere.
It's great. But
it's the guy who did The Lobster, right?
No spoilers, but it's like his shots are just, you can tell for the poster. The way that he composes shots is so Kubrickian. Like he must have watched The Shining 9,000 times. Lanthimos is already an immaculate filmmaker, but he just raises the bar that felt like it could not have been risen anymore. Just because of the technical level of filmmaking achieved in that film. Just you like, because emptiness in a frame can just feel so dull a lot of the time, but here it just feels like the score helps and the performance helps. But here it just feels like it fills you with so much dread and like anxiety. Like I felt so anxious in the theater when I saw that film.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of there was a similar movie that came out this year. I think we talked about it on the podcast a couple times. Oh, what is it called? Shit, now I can't remember.
Come on, Luke. Come on.
No.
Not good podcasting.
Like I said, if you've listened to any episode, that's a lot of what we do. God dang it. It's on Netflix. It's a horror film. A Dark Song. I just pulled it. I didn't look it up. I actually naturally pulled that. Okay, A Dark Song.
A Dark Song? I have not heard of this.
Okay, you should watch it. It's similar to what we're talking about. It's not quite as primal or surrealistic or any. It doesn't quite touch the place, but it's similar. And what I noticed was the sound design of it was, like you're saying, with every frame, it just puts you on edge, and you're kind of cold, and like you said, you're very anxious. This movie, for like a good 2 hours afterwards, I was on edge. Like I was like jumping at shit, and like right after it got over, my roommate wanted me to go with him to this thing, so I went up and like changed and walked back downstairs. And then when I got back downstairs, like he said something, and he was just on the couch, and I just must not have seen him, but I jumped like 10 feet back, and like just like he's like, what the fuck? I was like, I don't know, man. I'm just on edge right now. And I realized it was like that sound design similar to like The Shining, but it was like that piano wire type shit. But it's like when you're watching it, it like you said, every frame just it builds that tension and the anxiety, and you don't really get a breather. You know, it's just like, oh shit, and it builds and builds, and like that movie did that really well. And so if you haven't seen it, like that's a good one. I don't know if you're like afraid of like demonic stuff, like occult stuff.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things that put me on edge, but I don't really think I want that to take away from a film's integrity. Just because I feel like anything that would get recommended to me, I would want to give a chance.
Okay.
Regardless, like I have a sister that is in love with it, but I hate clowns. But I did it anyway. I watched it, and it was good.
Yeah.
I did. So yeah, I'll give that a chance, man. Yeah.
Good.
But how can we segue back to Twin Peaks?
Right. That's what I was kind of thinking too. We've kind of ventured off, which kind of happened. The sound design of
song must be great, but also great is the sound design in Part 8.
Sure. That works. Yeah. Man, it's something else.
Fluid I could have done.
Yeah, I can't remember. I do remember the some of the songs from the original Twin Peaks, like.
Yeah, and just a point I wanted to make about the music. Battle of Mentees, like you were talking about the scene where Briggs.
Sits down with Bobby.
He was explaining the White Lodge, and I'm not sure. I can't confirm this, but I would assume that Battle of Mentees' music was playing during that scene, and that, as cheesy as it may seem at surface level, it really is effective. And you get that the music helps on such an emotional level. Like it almost, I feel like it walks a very strange tightrope where it almost takes you out of the scene, but it helps it to a certain extent, if that makes any sense.
I think it does, because it's not like your traditional background music. and it's kind of it came out at an interesting time where it's like we're right after the 80s, so it's 1990, so we haven't really fully figured out what we're about in the 90s, and we're coming off all this heavy synth and all this greatness that I still love.
That's true.
So there's some synth influence in these songs where it's like a little bit cheesy, but like it kind of works too, because a lot of Twin Peaks is kind of the tongue-in-cheek charm of the ho-dunk, whatever kind of.
And Twin Peaks was so great because at the time you had all these police procedurals and daytime soaps, and I think you had, and that's all you had to watch. It feels strange to say it nowadays, but and I think that's where Twin Peaks really strived, because they had so much to riff on.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, what if we combine these two, where that's all we're being served, but we sort of riffed on it and made our own unique flavor. So
I never thought of it as like their take on a soap opera, but now that you say that, I'm like, that kind of makes me love it even more. Like, it really.
And what makes you love it even? What will make you even love it even more is, oh God help me, that obnoxious daytime soap opera that's playing in the background in some of those scenes.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I wish I could remember the name. I can't remember the name, but it's there. And if you go back and rewatch, you'll see that like if you were in the Palmer's living room, like Sarah Palmer would have it on the background, and like Lucy at her desk, like she would have it on sometimes, and it's something like love is in the title.
Oh,
it's killing me,
okay. Yeah.
I'll find out after, but
okay.
It's really funny because, like, I knew, like, that Lynch and Fox, their goal was to make their own soap opera, but stick to Lynch's quirkiness and Mark Ross's dialogue. And while riffing on it, they're like, okay, let's just have a soap opera of our choosing be on in the back of our own little soap opera. It makes any sense, but yeah, it's really funny. It's really funny.
Interesting. That puts a whole different twist on it. That makes a lot of sense. It was never, like, presented to me like that. It was always, like, kind of a legendary, show. But that actually makes a lot of sense for a lot of the decisions that were made. Interesting. Okay. Well, we spent a lot of time on this first season, but as far as, like, the return, so when I first heard about it, well, I remember, like, when Laura Palmer says in the dream sequence, and he's like, I've aged 25 years, and she says, I'll see you in 25 years. Like, I was working at UPS at the time, and I was sorting up top. One guy was out, so I was replacing him up there. So I was kind of by myself up on this ladder, and so I'm like doing this stuff, and I'm just like, and that was right while I'm watching this show, and I'm just like sorting boxes, just thinking about it, and I kept like thinking about the dream sequence in the Black Lodge where the midget's dancing, and then she talks to him or whatever, and just like, I remember I looked up that they were in talks to do the new Twin Peaks in 2016 at the time, and I was just like sorting boxes, and just like all of a sudden I like pictured her saying, I'll see you in 25 years, and then picturing that I looked up, that's 25 years later, and my mind about exploded. I was like, whoa! And like that started the hype train for me. I was like, I cannot wait. It just blew my mind. Oh, that was a fun moment.
Yeah, I can picture you like you're sort of you're in the UPS truck, and like when you're driving, like your face is just expressionless because of this realization that it's. Wait, she said we'll see you in 25 years, but it's going back 25. Oh my God! And so then, alas, it was actually 26 years, 27 years.
They dropped the ball.
But what's funny is, like, a bunch of people are like, oh, we were so close. And I'm always like, it's been 25 years since Fire Walk with Me. So I think they kind of got it.
Yeah. You know what? It's close enough. Yeah. It's close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so
how much time had passed since you had seen the original run and this past summer when the return was on?
I have not rewatched the original Twin Peaks, so it had been a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably about 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years since I had seen the original Twin Peaks, and probably about the same amount of time since I had that revelation. And but I did get a Showtime membership so that I could watch it.
Yeah.
And my expectations were pretty high. I don't know if we want to get into. I mean, there's not really a lot to spoil for.
Before I forget,
go ahead.
Just the marketing of the return, since like Winter Frost, and anybody on the show would say the same thing, but you wouldn't really want to give anybody footage because, like my friends and I were sort of like looking up the actors of who were confirmed for the show. Like we saw like Caleb Landry Jones, and we saw Laura Dern, Naomi Watts, and Tom Sizemore, and Jason Lee, and Tim Roth, and we're like, oh my god, this is fucking stacked. And so we kind of guessed that either Naomi Watts or Laura Dern were going to be Diane, since I think that would be kind of a smart move, and we got to pat ourselves on the back for that one. But spoilers, by the way.
That's the thing, is like with the return, there's not a lot. I don't know if there's like a lot we can really spoil, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really follow like a traditional, it doesn't really follow like a traditional plot line, and doesn't really pick up from where the other one left off. So it was weird.
Would you have any idea like where you want to begin with the return? There's too much.
It is a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, I think we could just kind of like, let's just do it like this. So like overall thoughts, I would probably like, honestly, overall I'm a little disappointed.
You're disappointed.
Yeah, just because like the thing is like, I don't want to like start off super negative about it, but I'm not trying to be, but like it was just with the original Twin Peaks, like we just spent almost an hour just talking about like how much it meant to us, how much we loved it, and how we loved those characters. And then to just kind of like rip all that apart and kind of give you the finger, like it was a classic Lynch thing. I mean, it was very apparent to me that Showtime was like, we're going to do whatever it takes to get David Lynch and Mark Frost back to do this new season. We don't care. And he's like, I'll only do it if you let me do whatever the fuck I want and don't have any notes. And they were like, you got it. And he just shat out whatever the fuck he wanted to do. And like, I feel like the return is just like all just Lynch scraping the bottom of the barrel of his mind. And just like, I'm just going to do the craziest shit I want to. And I don't give a shit if it makes any sense, because it's not going to. And we're just going to do a bunch of cool shit, and that's it. And like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it before I go any further?
Yeah. To get the flip side of that critique, I think it's brilliant. It makes up for everything that was wrong with the original run, including season 1. I think I'm one that is very forgiving, that in the sense that if you don't tie up a plot thread with a nice, neat little bow, then I kind of step back, and like Audrey, I would say, is a good example. I would say I would step back and say that is fine. I would say, what are you trying to get at? Like, Lynch, as weird as he is, and as horrifying as he can be, there's always an intention. I always feel like he's doing everything for a reason. So, if he wants to keep Dougie around for 16 episodes, then there's a reason why he'll do that.
Yeah, let's start there. The worst character in television history. The worst.
But no, I think The Return... I mean, I'm not sure if you've gone back to watch any episodes. I have not, but The Return is certainly unlike anything. It brought back that feeling of the original run that it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. An 18-hour-long movie is something nobody has ever done that I can think of.
It's true, but like I think one of the things I'm realizing that it was just too for me it was too harsh of a clash of styles, because the thing is like if this was just like an original David Lynch 18-part series, I would probably love it. I'd be like, cool, let's just strap in, because that's normally how it is with Lynch movies. It's like good or bad, it's pretty Lynchy, so you're like, terms good and bad don't really apply to David Lynch as much as other people, because he's just doing weird shit, and you're like, alright, I'm just here to see weird stuff. But just the way that the first two seasons, and I think we'll both admit that the second half of the second season got lost because it was trying to figure out a way to conventionally tell the rest of the story when it couldn't, but the whole thing about the pairing of those two things was like they were telling a story. The story was solving Laura Palmer's murder, right? So everything else, all the characters, all the plots led to that. And that was the story they were telling. That was the through line. And so when it got solved, it got messy and it got kind of weird. And they were like, well, what do we do now? I don't know. But, like, the thing that I think made it work so well and was so easy for people to get into was, like, that story. So they were more accepting of the abstract, weird Lynch stuff, because no matter how weird it got, it was still related to that story of solving her murder. Where this Return, like, and plus it set up characters, the characters had their own arcs, but they were all in service to the story, where in The Return, I don't know what the hell was going on. And there wasn't a through line, and it was kind of about this, and it was kind of about that, and then it was just sort of like, well, we're going to draw this out for no reason. And, like, I'm all for world building, but it was just hard to follow and hard to get invested because, like you said, there were so many actors that they had in it, big names, and they had so many characters that they, like, just couldn't, they didn't have, like, main characters to follow along with. Dougie, we spend the most time with, and he's not a character. He's a goddamn cardboard cutout that is just loud, and you're just like, what the fuck? I got made me so mad every time.
Am I going to play the role of in defense of Dougie Jones? Is that what I'm going to play here?
You're going to have to.
No.
Because I'm not going to defend
I think, yeah, you bring up some very valid points, but I think I'm just very forgiving is what it comes down to. I think it's how forgiving you are, really, of expectations, because you expect so much from a third season of a quirky David Lynch show.
Yeah.
And I think that if this, like, okay, let me paint you a picture. So, if this
you're on the phone, I can't see what you're painting.
If this has been another, like, Coop and Truman and Lucy and the rest of the Twin Peaks community sort of wacky misadventures, I don't think that is what we were expecting, like base level expectations. That's what all fans were expecting. But if that were the case, I don't think that would have been as satisfying compared to what we got. Like, it's
an interesting word you use.
Like the first lines of, I think, Lucy were, which Truman do you want to talk to?
Right.
And we're like, okay.
Yeah.
Please say tell me more.
Right.
I think the amount of open-endedness leads to so much more than we could have asked for. Because in the original Twin Peaks, despite a few things, everything is wrapped up, right? And everything is tied up, and you feel lots of closure, and closure is nice, but what Lynch, I think, was trying to get at with The Return is that you don't need closure for a finale to work, right? Because a finale is what we make it. And I don't think Lynch is the one to give us the finale. I think the finale is the one for us to get.
I think...
We can obviously speak of Part 18 in a little bit, but
I think you're right. I don't think you're wrong, but it's a couple interesting
you're wrong.
things.
Okay.
No, thank you. Thanks for being on. I'm never gonna call you again. No. So I think it's interesting you use the word satisfying. So I thought about this a lot because I'm like, would I have liked someone else coming in instead of David Lynch and just doing a David Lynch impression and doing what...
I can't even think of that.
Okay, but just doing what... Basically just giving the fans what they wanted for this third season and, maybe Twin Peaks shenanigans probably at Twin Peaks and just kind of have a bunch of callbacks and do that. Would I have enjoyed it more? No, probably not. But, the thing that I think when creativity works the best, in its most pure form, I think, is when it's overcoming obstacles, when you have to create your way out of a corner. So like if you watch obviously the old stories like Jaws, if you watch, Jaws, you can clearly see Spielberg is directing his ass off that whole movie. And we know now because it was infamous for having so many production problems and he wasn't a big time director at the time and ended up making a bunch of money, but the famous thing of the shark didn't work right, so then they didn't use it in a lot of shots, and that actually ended up building more tension because you didn't actually see it. Things like that. That's the classic example, but I feel like that stress and having to work together and work around problems is when creativity works the best. Because if that was just if the machine had worked properly and they didn't have production problems, it would have been another Deep Blue Sea or another just bullshit whatever movie, and it would have been fine and we would have all forgotten about it and it wouldn't have been what it is. And I feel like Twin Peaks, I feel like there was I have no doubts in my mind that David Lynch is hard to work with because he's just that type of guy. I just feel like he always has a vision and he's going to fight for it. And networks at the time were conservative, and I feel like they thought they were getting just another soap opera or whatever. And you can kind of see, but the way those two worlds bounce off each other works so well. And when you set up an established story and a through line, it almost felt like he was giving us the finger with The Return.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can say maybe the through line is getting Coop back out of wherever the shit he is. But it just it was drawn out and everything that happened didn't service that through line. All those plot points, all these other characters, not that it has to, but just when that was the formula for the first one, I'm not saying you have to follow it, but if all those weird, quirky characters would have at least, if their stories would have led into getting Coop back, and then we can follow along the story, but when there's so many just things that are unnecessary and bulked on, you're I don't know what's going on or what to follow. And then when we finally get Coop back after dealing with fucking Dougie Jones for so long, and Coop comes back...
I thought had it with the Dougie trash talk.
It's not stopping. I have so much more to say about Dougie Jones. But when we finally get Coop back, we get the finger. We get. Oh, you want to coop back? Well, guess what? Fuck you. I'm gonna put a big giant face, and I'm gonna blur the dialogue so you can't, so it takes you out of this moment, and you don't even get to enjoy the little bit of him being back. And like,
okay, all right. I think that's enough. Okay.
No,
I understand.
You know what? It's not. The green suit is stupid. All right, there. I can keep going.
No, I'm hearing a lot of I didn't know what was going on from you. And I can't say that I'm in disagreement, but what I can say is that when you don't know what's going on, or at least things aren't making sense, then there's an at least for me, I have an option. And that option is for my brain to sort of take a step back for a little bit until I do have comprehension. Because, like, I would say Terrence Malick, right? I don't know how big a fan you are of his, but
yeah,
I finished a portion of his work, and when I saw his movie this year, Song to Song, and Song to Song doesn't make sense, right? It's very incompetent, and you could even say it's a bad movie, but what's very interesting about Malick now, is like post Tree of Life Malick, is that he doesn't care about story. I mean, I'm talking very obviously, but he doesn't really care if you get it. He just does it because this is what he wants to do, and he feels like there's a, I'm using air quotes, story to be told. And it's a similar sense to this Return, where I suppose that if you don't know what's going on, like if you see Diane look across the street to the motel and she sees herself, then maybe like, I don't want to offer you a solution, because maybe the solution isn't good enough, because we should offer our own solution, but I would say I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's all for an intention, right? So.
But what is that intention? And the other thing...
That is something for us to figure out.
Yeah. So, okay, I think you're giving Lynch a lot of slack, which is fine. You're well within your rights. And I'm not saying... The other thing that I want to point out to everybody listening is I hate, like, the culture nowadays of, like, if you dislike one thing, it means that you dislike all this other stuff. Just because I was disappointed in The Return doesn't mean I'm not a huge David Lynch fan, but it also doesn't mean I'm just going to Phantom Menace it and just be like, everything he does is great. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying I didn't want to, but the thing is like, I'm fine with Lynch doing whatever he wants, and I'm not trying to be like an entitled fan here, but just when you have these characters established, set up in this beloved series, and then you come back with the name of that series the same, with those characters, there's gonna be inevitably an expectation, and you're gonna want to see something similar to the old one, and not that it wasn't too far away, it was just there wasn't enough, I don't know, depth. Like, it's like, if we would have just, like, cut out half of those characters and just spent more time with them, I probably would have liked it more, because I would have been more invested in the characters.
I'll give you this brief statement on why that worked in just a second, because I'm going to go there.
Okay, and I'll dismiss it. I'll fire back.
Just to let you know, just for awareness, like, going back to what I said earlier, the original Twin Peaks was riffing on soaps and procedurals, but nowadays we have things like Mad Men, Breaking Bad, Sopranos.
People call it the golden age of television.
Like we have the golden age of TV, obviously, and now there's a whole different genre or stylistic format to sort of riff on. So, yes, I think that it is a different Twin Peaks, but it's all more of what the culture is surrounding it than it is what the TV show wanted to be. Because I think it's running theme through the Twin Peaks Odyssey, if you will, is that the culture is influencing the show itself. So I think that's something special that it gets to wear proudly on its sleeve.
Yeah, that's not
going to Dougie.
You know, that's not a bad, like, movie fights argument. I feel like you might have swayed someone on movie fights, but... Because it's not a bad argument, but I just don't really... I don't know if you're... I see what you're saying, but I also don't know if it's necessarily 100% applicable. But
I'm only guessing.
But I'm giving you props. That's a really good argument. Anyway, so what about Dougie?
But yes, Dougie. Episode 16, Coop wakes up, spoilers. How... You just stand up and cheer. Just I stood up and cheered.
Oh, yeah.
I clapped. Like
oh,
it
yeah.
was Broadway.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that would have came as emotionally effective if Dougie had gone away in in part 10 or part 12, you know? I think that Lynch just drags us along to a further he can possibly drag us that it becomes almost insufferable. But I found Dougie to be I found him to be a lot of fun. Even if he was barely in an episode, like if Sonny Jim dragged him out to the backyard just to play a game of catch, but the game of catch just ended up just being a short scene when Sonny Jim.
That was the best. That was the best part of Dougie was when it was 2 seconds.
Oh man, just little shit like that. Like the first time that he drinks coffee and he spills it all over himself, and Jamie E yells at him like, "Oh, it's just that's good stuff." Like the sex
Is it
scene.
good? Yeah.
The sex scene, dude. I'm not trying to convince you that Dougie is a great character because you're entitled, man. But I'm just saying where I'm coming from. I had a lot of fun. And,
you know, I get it.
Coop was missed.
I'm
sorry, I don't mean to jump all over you, but I would say, and this is a stretch. I'm not saying it isn't a stretch, but I think that Gordon Cole, was sort of the surrogate for not necessarily...
He was maybe the best part of the return.
Totally.
He was really
Cole,
good,
but,
yeah.
I would say... and Albert. But I would say he's a surrogate not necessarily of Cooper's personality, but the role that he had made the majority of how prominent he was in this
Yeah, I can
show.
see that.
Yeah.
I think Albert and Gordon are really, they really shine.
That Truman and Coop sort of dynamic.
Yeah.
It was great stuff, man.
I think...
You want to go to the good stuff? Let's go to the good stuff.
Okay.
After your point. After what you're right at.
So the other thing is that Dougie sucks. And I think the majority of our messages back and forth was just me saying, I hate Dougie, I want Coop back. And I was just screaming the entire time.
Every time I've received one of those messages, I'm like, this is a very instant reaction.
Oh, fuck you for saying that. You don't get to come on my podcast and say that to me. No, here's the deal. Coop is a great character, and he was our guy, and he was our character, and I don't mind the mystery. I don't mind waiting for him to come back, but just have him be off in wherever he is. Don't give us the tease of like, hey, he's coming back, he figured it out, and then no, he switches places and then he comes back, but he's not really back because it's basically a retarded person, you know. I don't know, I probably shouldn't say that, but you know, Dougie is basically that. He's basically handicapped. He can't do anything for himself, and then people are like walking around. And it's just, and I'm like, I want Coop so bad. And he's just right on the surface. And you're just like, nope, you got to deal with this stupid shenanigans every week. Oh, you know, I would have much rather just had Coop be off trapped in the Black Lodge. and done psychedelic stuff instead of being so close to coming out and having to deal with all that stupid, nonsensical bullshit that was Dougie. So, there, we can finally leave it.
Let's wrap it up.
So, but I mean, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because I like having, differing opinions, and, if we could do it differently, I don't know, like, I just, for my own solace, I just have to think of them as different things, because they kind of are, I just have to think of the original Twin Peaks as the original Twin Peaks, and this as, like, a reinterpretation of it by Lynch, and then I can, like, sleep at night. Because otherwise, like, because when you call it Twin Peaks The Return, you're literally saying this is continuing on what you loved before, and that's not really what we got. But like I've said to you before, I do definitely really respect Lynch for not just giving us what we want, and just saying, here you go, shut up, and then we just, are bottle fed. But if he doesn't, I think I have the right to be frustrated by it. And
you do not. Right? But no, it's I think what Lynch is one of his best attributes is that he evokes conversation, right? So the conversation could be anything because there's so much to dissect in his work, and Dougie is just a character that you can't imagine ever being created, but somehow here he is. And I mean, regardless of what you think of him, McLaughlin's performance is just outstanding because of how much versatility he has, from being Evil Coop or
that's
Mr.
true.
Coop or Mr. C to being Dougie Jones, and then going back to normal Coop. And it's great to see an actor just take on so many roles while taking on one role that was created 27 years ago at the same time. So it's an incredible performance that is well deserved of that nomination.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for right, I hope he gets it, because if it wasn't for Evil Coop, like,
if he wins, this is going to sound very dated.
You're right. But if it wasn't for Evil Coop, for him playing Evil Coop and Dougie and Real Coop, like, all those are three, they're so distinctly different that, you're right, he does put in a great performance. It's just, Dougie just sucks. He's got my vote for worst TV character of all time. Straight up, I think worse than Scrappy Doo. I think worse than Kimmy Gibbler. I'm trying to think of other bad TV roles. Look, he was frustrating.
But no, I think that that's a good transition. Evil Coop is the other side of the coin. And his introduction is sort of him, like, blowing the face off of some other goon in a rundown little house. And I love Evil. I loved Evil Coop. I loved how tone deaf he is to any other surroundings, and how particular of his goals he is. He's like personification. I mean, he literally is the personification of all evil. But he's great at who he is, and unflinchingly, he is evil. I don't know what else to say. He is evil. Evil at its true form.
Yeah. And, he has, like, all the determination that you loved about Coop, but obviously turned on its head.
Yeah.
And
it's like everything that Coop never wanted to be.
Right. Because Coop was afraid of that.
Everything that Coop wasn't, I should say that.
Right. Yeah, and it was, I'll say, the nice part about Return, I think it bookends nicely. I think the beginning is really good, and, like, the end, save for, like, it heats up at the end too. I'll say that, but like I think it bookends well. There's some stuff in the middle that's good, but a lot of it's just kind of filler. You know, you're like, okay, fine, whatever. But like I loved the musical acts at the end of every episode. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah.
Like the one Mississippi by the Milk Carton Kids or whatever. Like. That song hit me hard, and I love that song now. I've listened to it a bunch of times. Like, a couple of those songs were really good. I just remembered when you brought up the, what's-his-face on the bike with the rich woman, when he was singing...
Oh, Bobby.
Bobby, yeah. When he's singing that song on stage, it's like, just you and I...
Oh, no. Oh, dude, no, that's James.
James,
sorry.
that's what I meant.
I'm sorry. Yeah, all right, that was my fault.
Yeah, James. When I was like, wow, but it wasn't like ironic. It's like that's just how this guy sings. It was so high. It was funny.
It's just so out of nowhere.
Yeah, and then he gets like beat up, and you're like, when I heard him.
Something that I don't want to say dates the show because I feel like that is too harsh on it because it is that sort of soapy it is that soapiness to it, and it's what it's trying to riff on. I love that scene in the original run because it bookends with Bob going towards Laura Palmer's cousin.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like Bob just comes straight at the camera. He just crawls to you, and it just does not stop. You think that he's going to come through your TV. It's horrifying. But yeah, James singing that song in The Return is.
I forgot it was.
It's a bit fan servicey, but you know that
Lindsay
and Frost are not ones to do fan service.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to say. We barely got any service at all. Like they just I hated what they like. I hated when they dangled the Big Ed thing in front of our face, and like
really?
I was like, "Oh, you piece of shit!" Because my heart breaks for Big Ed. All right.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I love Big Ed so much. He is the most redeemable person in that whole show. I'm gonna cry right now. No, but he was just the sweetest guy ever, and he stayed with his batshit crazy piece of shit girl, and he deserved her so much. He deserves so much more, and he should have had it, and then he kind of does. But then The Return, and they're like, well, fuck Big Ed still, and I'm like, no. If anybody gets a happy ending, it is Big Ed, all right? I take issue with that. Big Ed has been shat on enough, all right? He deserves the best happy ending of anyone.
Yeah, he does. He's a great character. I
didn't realize I was that passionate about it until right now. I feel for him, because, like, you know what? I think I'm afraid I'm going to be that guy. Because I'm too nice, and I'm a big guy, and it's like, that's the number one rule, don't stick your dick in crazy, but, like, the fact of the matter is, like, shit, if I'm stuck with some crazy broad, it's like, I don't know, and then there's this really nice, pretty one that I could go, but then I'm just too nice, can't get out of my own way. Oh, I feel so much for him.
It's a struggle.
It is.
Twin Peaks transcends television, and that's one of...
And that is like one of the soapiest parts of the original too. I'm just realizing that's such a soap opera trope, and I just fell right for it. They got me.
It's a trap.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Well, how did you feel the first time you saw Part 8?
Part 8. Which one was that?
Yeah. I shouldn't assume that you...
Shouldn't... What? Are you throwing shade at me, Jack? Again?
No,
on my own show? Is that what we're doing?
This was the Bob origin.
Look, you know how little we put into prep for these episodes.
Right.
You should know that.
I thought this was all like jokey joke, like.
Oh, about the prep? No, we do not lie. That is 100% true. The littlest amount. Oh, was that the Was that Got a Light?
Mushroom Cloud, like 50s horror movie. Like,
Was it Got a Light?
Yeah, Got a Light. Yes.
Yeah, that was maybe my favorite.
Yeah.
That was maybe my favorite episode.
What was your first reaction?
Oh, I loved it.
Because that was a big polarizing.
I was like,
power of television.
Yeah, I was like, finally, this is the kind of shit that I wanted this whole time, and it really didn't have much to do with like the through line or anything, but just like this is just 100% David Lynch, and I was all in. I was like, finally, here we go. It's gonna heat up, and then it kind of was just its own thing. But like, yeah, that was maybe my favorite episode.
Yeah, like that weekend or that night, I should say. I came home from Florida, and I just got home from a flight, and I was like, oh, man, I want to go to bed, but I know Twin Peaks aired last night. I missed it, so I'm going to watch last night's episode. It was part 8. And and I was so tired, and I was just like, well, is this the right thing? Like, it might. And I was just so taken back by everything, because
Wait. So you're on the other end of this? You didn't like Got a Light as much?
No. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Oh.
I just was a day late. And I hadn't heard any of the hype that was built up to it. And so when I saw it, I was just so mesmerized by everything that was going on, all the sound and imagery and color and
Got a Light.
stark black and white. It was just
Got a Light.
Nothing got a light.
Oh man, so good.
It was just so amazing, and I can't believe Showtime aired something like this.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Dude, God bless Showtime, man. Like, for the amount of freedom that was given to the team.
Yeah.
It was.
They did definitely like.
Quite vast.
They sold their soul for sure. They were just like, fuck it.
Like 18 hours of Lynch is like an embarrassment of riches.
Honestly, it sounds like he Lynch was like, all right, Showtime keeps bugging me. I'm just gonna give them this crazy. I'm gonna make all these crazy demands. They'll never accept it. And they were like, yep, that's all fine. 18 hours, whatever you want, that's fine. Yeah, no notes. You can do whatever you want, whatever budget. And we're like, yeah, it's fine. And he's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I love how nobody asked for this origin story, and when nobody asks for things, that's usually a bad sign. But here,
like Stranger Things,
opposite.
Like was it the second to last episode when it was just like you've seen all Stranger Things, right?
I didn't hear you.
Stranger Things. Have you seen all Stranger Things?
I haven't seen it.
Okay. Either one. Have you seen season 1?
I have not.
Okay, then forget I said anything. Continue. I was gonna make a pretty good point there, but
I feel unprepared.
Yeah. Now the shoe is on the other foot, Jack. Oh, what? Oh, you're not prepared? Oh, you don't know exactly. Exactly. That's what it feels like. Anyway, continue.
Jeez. This is not a good feeling.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said an origin story that you weren't really expecting, and a lot of times and then I jumped in.
Yeah, no, I forgot what it was now. You shit. No, it's
I'm sorry, man. I really thought you'd seen it, and that was such a good point. I'm telling you, that was such a good point. You would have been so proud of me.
about Part 8, and is that it gave I love how Showtime gave us a week in between Part 8 and Part 9, so we can really digest. Like, not only is that a really good, break point for the two halves, even though, 9 would be where you would expect to get, like, an intermission almost.
Okay, yeah.
But it's almost like, you can't expect anyone to address what happened in Part 8, because obviously nobody was there, but it just made it all the more better that nobody addressed it. Just because, okay, we're just going to ignore all this. We're just, okay, all right, back to normal.
Yep.
And it was just kind of, it was so otherworldly, and I think it was a friend that brought up that it was sort of like the Eraserhead sequel that we never got.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
And it has no interlocking with the 77 cult classic, but I do think that he's onto something when he says that, because it has the tone and the atmosphere and vibe
I can see that
Eraserhead brilliantly achieved. So I'm not sure where we can go from here. I don't know if you want to stick with Part 8, but
that is probably well, it's hard to say, but that was probably that's definitely a highlight of the return. And
yeah, definitely.
that was an instance for me, as you've heard me, I sound overly negative about it, but that was like a part where Lynch really just kind of totally ran away from this, did whatever he wanted, and that one had worked for me in spades. And if all the other chances he took worked that well for me, then I probably would have liked it a lot. But and it's I think that's kind of happened a couple times this year, with the Blade Runner sequel. That was a phenomenal. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah.
Okay, great movie.
Of the year.
Oh yeah, I mean, just phenomenal. Denis Villeneuve is my favorite working director. And it's just
up there.
That was a movie where it's that was another one where it's it was so true to what Blade Runner is, but probably could have been more successful if it was half as long and was safer and didn't take a lot of as many chances. But for me it worked. And with The Last Jedi that just came out, Rian Johnson took a lot of chances and did things very differently than most Star Wars movies, and for some people those chances worked really well, and for a lot it didn't. But and there's two ways you can go about, and with Twin Peaks, it was again an old franchise that was restarting, having a sequel put on it, and it wasn't exactly what people were expecting, and so, but then you have when The Force Awakens came out, a lot of people complained that it was too similar to what it was coming from. So it's just basically no fans are going to be happy about anything that anybody does, but it's just there's different ways you can look at it, and I just see it as I give him props. He's going to take chances. He's going to do what he wants, and you just got to know that sometimes those chances aren't going to work for your sensibilities, and sometimes they are. And it doesn't mean that I'm fuck David Lynch, he sucks now. If he would have just played it safe and done something,
ruined my childhood.
Yeah, exactly. If he just, I don't know. It's kind of with George Miller. He came out and just made his best Mad Max movie a couple years ago, and he's 70 whatever, and it's he was doing crazy shit in that movie. I don't know how old David Lynch is, but this dude he's got to be.
70,
yeah. But this new one, I'm I don't know how. You're an old man. You're supposed to be I remember back in the day.
Wall Street, yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. That's a great example too. It's that same stuff, where it's you should be getting old. Why? How can you do this stuff this art that's so virile and so in your face? Let's see.
Again, I think that's a really good point you brought up with Blade Runner, it's on its knees. The film's on its knees, begging you for questions and not presenting it with answers. And I think that's really art that is rare to come by these days, but it's art that wants to be more accessible. But the more that kind of art is made, the less accessible it becomes, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah, and I think
if Blade Runner 2049 was, like you said, if Villeneuve took less chances, and if it were like 2 hours, then and if it made a lot more money, then I don't think it would have garnished the critical reception and all the brilliance that it received. So it's really like a choice that a filmmaker has to make. So I think with Lynch, that since he didn't, because I mean, if he exceeded expectations, that's a question that can come in many forms. But I think that he did something that nobody was expecting, so that opens up a much bigger discussion.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that when art is able to do that, it has more of a lasting effect. I think that's why, like you said, it opens up the conversation, and there's no real close to the conversation, so people keep having it. Like with The Shining and with 2001: A Space Odyssey and a lot of Kubrick films, it's a lot of that kind of art where you're like, there's an open dialogue and there's no clear-cut reason or answers, so people are just going to keep talking about them forever. And, with, I think Blade Runner 2049 did a brilliant job of it, but where I would compare and contrast Blade Runner to the new Twin Peaks would be that Blade Runner felt like Blade Runner. It was in the world, it respected the story, where I think with David Lynch doing Twin Peaks, he was like, fuck everything that came before this, I'm blowing the bridge, I'm doing whatever I want, and like, it's still like, it's similar and different, but overall, it's David Lynch, and like you said,
have to depend on how. I think it has to depend on your acceptance, and if the acceptance is not something that you like, then that just is dependent on you. And I think that makes it all the more interesting, is how accepting you are of how different the return is to the original run. And obviously, as the conversation speaks for itself, that one of the two of us is not as accepting as the other.
Of that. But I feel like that's a dangerous road to be walking, though, because then all of a sudden, when something like The Phantom Menace happens, then, I mean, you can make all the same arguments you're making for this, for that, and just say, well, he went in a different direction.
One is much better than the other.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, in my opinion. I don't think The Return is as bad as The Phantom Menace, but I know a lot of people at the time were saying, no, it's just different, and George Lucas is a genius, and he's taking these different chances, and no, Jar Jar or Dougie is actually a funny character. Oh yeah, I did it. You're goddamn right, I did. Oh yeah, I can see the forest from the trees here, Jack. I got some years on you. That's a great comparison. I'm so proud of myself that I was able to do that. And then other things like, oh no, but he's a young Anakin Skywalker. I can see the darkness in him starting. And, I'm sure, I'm not saying you're doing this, but I'm just saying, it's an interesting phrase you use of acceptance. Because I think that art should still be held to a standard, and it's subjective, right? Like we said. So, if it worked for you, then that's all that really matters. But I'm just always leery of, because, I love Denis Villeneuve. I don't think he's made a movie that isn't, an A+. But that time's going to come, and I'm ready for it. I hope it's just not a terrible movie where I lose respect for him. But there's probably going to be a movie that comes out that I'm like, it wasn't his best, but
for all we know, his Cleopatra movie could be dog shit.
Yeah, it very well could, and it wouldn't. It would be like, okay, so he didn't hit it out of the park on this one, but he's still one of my favorite directors. Like Christopher Nolan, he's one of my all-time favorite directors, and Interstellar was the first movie where I was like,
I think you're walking on thin ice.
I know it's controversial, but I will say
very separate.
They are. I'm just saying that when Interstellar came out, that was the first movie where I was like, oh, maybe Christopher Nolan doesn't just shit gold every second, that was where I was like,
I think it was a little bit before Interstellar.
Yeah, like a lot of people with Dark Knight Rises,
had this realization.
I was kind of like very forgiving or accepting of Dark Knight Rises, and I was willing to overlook the apparent flaws with it and was like, no, it's still fine. But then when Interstellar happened, I was like, oh, he's not perfect. And,
Yeah, I think we had very similar takeaways from Interstellar. That's a big old bloated mess.
And old legs would be upset. He loves Interstellar. He will defend it till the end of time. But it's like
I would love for him to.
Do not get between that man and his McConaughey. He will fight you.
No, McConaughey isn't even the problem.
I know.
It's the script.
There's no arguing with that man. Yeah, no, I know. And it's like, it's just, you want it to be good, and there's so much potential, and you're like, okay. But then it's just, you just weren't quite there.
I'm not the hugest Nolan fan, or is hugest a word? Is hugest a word?
Absolutely not. No.
Biggest. There we go. Found it. I'm not the biggest Nolan fan because I think that he gets a bit too. I think he gets. He doesn't find nuance with his dialogue, and I don't think. And he gets a bit too exposition-y.
Okay.
And I think that's, and it irritates me because he focuses on spectacle a lot, and that's fine. There's a lot of directors that like to focus on spectacle, but when his stories get so bloated, it's hard to make your mind go to the spectacle rather than the story.
Right.
So I think, but exceptions to that, I think, is Dunkirk, where he's really subverting himself with
he was very subtle.
His dialogue very less exposition-y and having no character in that movie,
right.
Which I think served that movie leaps and bounds up above his more recent work.
It's interesting.
I think it's
an interesting point.
Since, The Prestige.
Okay.
But I could be talking on my ass. We're supposed to.
Well, you have kind of been this whole time.
He's supposed to be your guy.
I mean, his. I think. I mean, 3 of his movies are in my top 10 favorites of all time. My favorite movie of all time is Memento, which was directed by him.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a big Nolan head, but it's not but I'm still not thinking he's perfect or whatever. I am a huge Michael Mann fan. But I understand that Michael Mann has made some bad movies.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Michael Mann, I think, is severely underrated. Yeah. Michael Mann is just one of those directors where you see a movie, it just hits you. So I'm just I am all in. But, he has some movies that I don't like, and I'm okay with saying that. But with Christopher Nolan, about exposition, I just have to say this. I am with everyone. I am continued. I'm on the front lines of the war against exposition. I hate it, and when it's just clunky and lazy, and I don't like it. And a lot of my favorite movies are ones that don't have a lot of exposition. I find myself being more drawn to movies that are just about one guy, and he doesn't really say much, and he just goes about shit, and you're not really sure of his intentions. But what I will say is that with Nolan, the point I'm trying to make is with Inception, over half of that movie is pretty much exposition.
To avoid it.
That's what I'm saying.
I get it.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that over half of that movie is all setup and exposition, but it 1,000% works, and that Inception is in my top 10 of all time. But like that's one where it's like I don't like exposition, but it is 100% needed in that movie, and it's a lot of that movie, but it just works so well. And so there's an exception to every rule, I guess. Yeah, The Matrix has a lot. I just watched that on the plane, actually, on my flight back. And there is quite a bit, but it works. It's world building, and it works because it's a character like Neo who honestly doesn't know what's going on. So it works as a catalyst for the audience because we're like, this is very abstract ideas, and we don't really know what's going on. He doesn't know what's going on, so it works in that ways. But
kind of like Ellen Page in Inception.
Right, exactly. She's
the audience surrogate.
Yep, that's exactly it. Doe-Eye doesn't know what's going on. She asks the questions that we're thinking, and then they answer them, and it works. But in Interstellar, where it doesn't work, is when Matthew McConaughey is explaining, explaining what a wormhole is.
Anne Hathaway should have been the surrogate.
Exactly, because like that when he's explaining a wormhole to other astronauts, I'm like, they fucking know what a wormhole is, man. Why are you folding a paper and putting a pencil through it? They know. All right, they wouldn't be on this mission if they didn't know.
Complaints about Inception. Interstellar.
Yeah.
So,
it's just like, bro, you're not fooling anybody. You're saying, okay, audience, this is what you probably don't know, so here you go. No, stop it. Knock it off. Anyway.
Knock it off.
That's it. I'm calling you out, Nolan. All right, I'm sick of it. But, hey, we've gone super long, Jack. I don't know if you know this. I mean, we're coming up on 2 hours here, which...
This is like one of Pete Holmes' podcasts.
I know. Oh, yeah. I wish I could do 3-hour podcasts all day. I would do them to know. And I think the longest one we've had for one is when Tyler and I did our Marvel Universe review. That was like 2.5 hours.
Goddamn, yeah. I can see that being pretty long.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But overall, I think Twin Peaks: The Return is one that you should see, obviously.
Yeah.
And if you're a Twin Peaks fan, know that it's not. I would just, like I said, if I would have went into it thinking, all right, this isn't necessarily a continuation of the old ones, it's kind of a reimagining or a new take on it, I think I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. And I could have just kind of cut ties with my expectations of what it was and kind of accepted what was new here. But, Jack, I appreciate you.
Before we sign off,
Okay, yeah.
Quickly, last sort of point, I just got to get your take on the finale.
Okay.
But like I said earlier, there is no real finale.
No.
In a sense. But I guess I'll start off, since I asked it. But, for me, it's very... It was very Back to the Future 2.
Okay.
In a sense. And,
do you like Back to the Future 2?
Back to the Future 2. Yeah, spoilers for Back to the Future 2.
In
that film, obviously, Marty, he goes to...
underrated, in my opinion. I like
underrated film, yes. Thank you, Luke.
Yep, no problem.
He goes back to 1985 to course correct his mistakes and try to rearrange history, but rearranging history then in a sense, kind of, it messes with the present. So, then, from what I got from it, what was obviously apparent was that in part 17, Coop goes back in time. He saves Laura Palmer from going with Jacques Renault, Leo, and Ronette Pulaski in Fire Walk With Me. So then he takes her to the woods, and then she is taken by Judy, who's the entity that controls everything. And so then once that is and then I've never been able to explain this before. So then Coop is in present day, some form. Oh yeah, and then that creates an alternate timeline, right, where Laura is not dead, and so.
But it's not Laura.
Their names to Carrie Page, and so then we're in an alternate timeline.
But
and so then this Coop this variation of Coop called Richard finds Laura, or Carrie Page, and then takes her to her old home to try to reunite her with Sarah, and that doesn't end up working out, and then she screams, and Judy shuts off everything. So I think that it's just a little case of an alternate timeline where, you know, if you, it's everything is normal, but some things are just a little off, and like time just splits up into another. At least what I get from alternate timelines, this is what I get from it. It's just time splits off into another inner working of itself, so that it's like Dale Cooper is sort of a time traveling agent at this point, and I think it's up to anybody to assume how many times he's done this, because he obviously the last words he speaks are, "What year is this?" So that, I think, is to imply where am I? And he could be in 2022. He could be in 2017. We don't know. Coop doesn't know, and it's up to us to figure out. And that's why I think the ending was brilliant. So, what do you think, Luke?
Yeah.
Crazy podcast.
I just wish that Doc Brown was here to diagram all this out for us.
Yeah.
I feel like that would make more sense. That's all I was thinking about the entire time was when you were talking was him drawing the line on the chalkboard, putting 1985 the line back. That's all I was thinking. And I'm like, okay, so we're down underneath the line here. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like all throughout the return, like you see Lynch and Frost riffing on other films, like they were riff on Seven and that pie scene with the Mitchum brothers.
Oh yeah.
Like they would. I wish I could think of other examples. Like they had very Tarantino-esque dialogue between Roth and Genevieve.
It was a little bit Ghostbusters-y when they were in the forest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, a little bit like ragtag group of old timers that are sort of searching for the unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the finale. It's interesting about the alternate timeline. I kind of took it as like an alternate dimension, because it could be an alternate timeline, but if she changed her name from Laura Palmer, she would have had more of a reaction to Coop, or whatever his name was, in that scene where he says Laura Palmer, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. But she had just killed a guy, and it was weird.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if she was Laura Palmer, she would have been a little more scared of, like, how do you know who I was? Instead of just, like, I don't know who that is. So I'm not, like, it's not a bad theory, but I just don't know if it pans out. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened. I was just thinking it was some kind of alternate dimension. But, like, with Lynch, you just kind of take what he gives you.
We were so emotionally exhausted from part 17.
Oh, yeah.
Part 18 was just kind of a punch in the face.
Yeah, no, it was like, yeah, fine. I guess I deserve this now. Like, you're just like, there's nothing I can do. I can't fight back. You're just like, okay, I guess this is what happens. Like, sure, why not? No, it was, yeah. Like I said, it was just, I don't want to be a whiny kid here, which I don't. But it's like, you just want more, and those characters mean so much to you. You're just like, I just want them to be respected, and not just like, I guess I kind of get what he was trying to do, and it's his story, so if he wants to, it's his to do what he wants and stuff, but it's just kind of like, I don't know. I can kind of, like, that's kind of how I deal with the prequels, too, I guess. Is like, there are some okay parts with the prequels, but I just think, that happened a long time before the original trilogy. So, in my mind, it's like, we've done things in the past that we're not proud of, but we're still okay today. Like, we still like the original trilogy, even though the prequels kind of sucked, they were kind of farther in the past. So you're like, oh, well, like, you know, the genocide of the Native Americans. Yeah, that was bad, but we'll just, like, pretend that it didn't sort of happen and just focus on today.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, so I can kind of, like, detach some of that stuff in my head where it's like, this is the opposite, but it was like, oh, the glory Twin Peaks was great, and then the return is like, yeah, way far in the future, okay, whatever, that happened later, but it was good for this small amount of time. And, you know, it was safe and fun, and then, you know, stuff happened later, but that's just kind of, that's how my mind works, I guess. But, you know, we have been going a long time, and we should probably call it, but Jack, this has been awesome.
This has been great.
I really appreciate you coming through for me.
No problem.
Do you want people to find you on Twitter? Do any shout-outs you want to do?
Yeah, Twitter, JackD285. Instagram, JackD617.
Okay. Boom.
Posting a lot there.
Yeah.
Retweeting some funny shit. So.
That's good. He's a good follow.
Yeah.
I know. We've been Twitter follows for a couple years now, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, like I said, appreciate you coming on. Go follow Jack. He's doing a lot of cool stuff. He's a good fan. You're always sending me cool articles and retweeting stuff that I'm not even in the know about. So if you're a movie fan, especially a Lynch fan, or just kind of want to get more in depth, Jack's a great resource. As always, you can find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89, our podcast at L2 Podcast or L Squared Podcast. We're on SoundCloud, YouTube. Go check us out. Hopefully Old Legs will be okay. We're not sure, but we'll keep you updated. And till next time.